This is just the beginning. To uncover more of humanity's journey in the stars, subscribe and join us for the next thrilling chapter. Before a cliffhanger, right at a pivotal moment in the story, you can tease the next episode with a hint for viewers to subscribe. Earth's weapons were a joke. Or at least, that's what the alien commanders thought. With centuries of domination over countless planets, they considered Earth nothing more than a backwater world. Primitive projectile weapons? Aimed shots? Manual reloading? It was laughable to them, a glimpse into a past they'd long abandoned in favor of energy cannons and tracking missiles. For the aliens, victory lay in technology, not skill. When the first invitation reached Earth's military to demonstrate their firearms, the offer was accepted without hesitation. Earth had sent its best marksman, a quiet, unassuming figure who never seemed fazed by the taunts thrown his way. To the alien commanders, he looked like a relic himself, clad in standard combat gear with a rifle that seemed centuries behind their sleek, plasma-based armaments. The marksman wasn't here to prove them wrong. He wasn't even here to make a statement. For him, each assignment was about duty, precision, and discipline. So, as he approached the center of the alien proving grounds, his mind wasn't on impressing these creatures but simply on the task at hand. The setting was an open field surrounded by curious alien troops, some of them stifling laughs, others outright jeering. They exchanged comments in their language, mocking the tiny rifle in his hands, the lack of an energy core, and its reliance on old-fashioned bullet mechanics. How could this thing cause any harm? The marksman remained silent, paying no attention to the snide remarks. He checked his equipment with practiced hands, loading each bullet, adjusting his sights, and measuring the wind. His focus was complete, unbroken by the noise around him. To the aliens, it was the picture of a man performing a pointless ritual, adhering to the limitations of his species' inferior technology. Yet, even as they continued their ridicule, a sense of curiosity began creeping in. Finally, he raised the rifle, looking down the sights, zeroing in on the distant target they'd set up, a mechanical sphere hovering in the air. It was no easy mark, even for them, a moving target outfitted with slight evasive maneuvers. The aliens waited, expecting him to miss by a mile. Instead, they heard a single, muted crack. The bullet found its mark with pinpoint accuracy, piercing the target's core in one clean shot. The sphere dropped instantly, its small sparks the only evidence it had been struck. The laughter faded, replaced by a low murmur as the soldiers exchanged glances. Was it luck? The commander in charge, an imposing figure with a permanent sneer, stepped forward, narrowing his eyes at the marksman. He ordered another, more advanced target, a small, swift drone designed to dodge anything within milliseconds. No human, they reasoned, could possibly keep up with it. The marksman simply adjusted his stance, his breathing steady and focused. The drone zipped across the sky, darting erratically, moving faster with each pass. Another crack split the air, and again, the bullet found its target. The drone crashed to the ground, its evasive maneuvers useless. This time, the murmurs grew louder, the disbelief turning into something else, perhaps a touch of respect? But the commander was far from convinced. How could a mere projectile weapon, in the hands of an unenhanced human, possibly overcome their technology? He ordered an immediate reset, calling for a new array of targets. They brought in 3 drones this time, each faster and more unpredictable than the last. They moved in erratic patterns, darting up, down, left, and right in a complex web meant to confuse even the most advanced trackers. The marksman observed them, his gaze calm, analytical. He'd faced worse scenarios, seen more chaotic battlefields, and in his mind, each movement was predictable, each pattern easy to decipher. He aimed, barely taking a breath before firing 3 shots in quick succession. Each bullet found its mark, and the drones dropped from the sky, one after the other. Now, the crowd of alien soldiers was silent. The sneers were gone, replaced by something they hadn't anticipated, admiration. They began to understand that this was no ordinary human soldier. He was precise, focused, deadly. The commander's face twisted with frustration, grappling with the idea that a human marksman could defy the odds so completely. He couldn't understand it, and he wasn't prepared to let it stand unchallenged. Grudgingly, he ordered a final round, something that had never been used in a demonstration before. It was a live combat target, a mechanical adversary equipped with defenses and designed to shoot back, meant to test the mettle of their elite soldiers. The alien soldiers gasped in shock. This wasn't protocol. These demonstrations were supposed to be harmless tests, but the commander was out for proof, desperate to see this human miss, to make him falter. The marksman glanced at the new target, reading its subtle movements, the slight shifts in its stance. This wasn't about technology. This was about knowing when and where to act. When the target began to advance, the marksman did something unexpected. He stood still, tracking it with unwavering focus. The alien machine analyzed him, calculating angles, trying to predict his movements. But there were no movements to predict. He waited patiently, as if sensing the exact moment the machine would make its attack. And when it did, he was faster. His shot was unerringly precise, striking the target's weak point before it could even engage its own weaponry. The machine collapsed, sparks flying, a heap of smoldering metal on the ground. The soldiers' silence was absolute now, a mixture of awe and discomfort sweeping through them. They'd seen something they could barely understand, let alone replicate. The commander stared, his pride wounded, his certainties shattered. The demonstration was over, but it had left an impact none of them could ignore. For all their technology, their superiority in machinery and weapons, they'd overlooked the human element, the patience, the skill, the instincts honed through years of practice and focus. They had laughed at Earth's primitive firearms, mocked the man who wielded one, only to find themselves humbled in the face of true precision. No one spoke as the marksman turned, lowering his weapon, ready to leave. The commander, at a loss for words, could only watch as he walked away, his mind struggling to process what he'd just witnessed. He couldn't admit it, wouldn't dare to voice it, but somewhere deep within, he'd felt a twinge of something he hadn't expected, fear. As the marksman left the field, the aliens were left with a lesson they would not soon forget. Skill, after all, could be just as deadly as any advanced weaponry, and humans, it seemed, were masters of both. The marksman's calm never wavered, even as the alien commander signaled for the next challenge, raising the stakes. The gathered alien troops looked on with mixed expressions, some still skeptical, others now silenced, almost as if fearing they'd underestimated this human. But for the marksman, the task was simple. He'd been through rigorous training and knew each shot mattered. It was precision over numbers. The new challenge was a set of moving targets than a boastful program to change direction. So when the commander ordered a new, darting, faster series of targets, this time alien troops whispered among themselves, confident this time the human would falter. The targets weren't just faster, they were more erratic, designed to confuse anyone relying solely on tracking speed. But the marksman's focus didn't break. His breathing slowed, his grip on the rifle adjusted subtly, aligning perfectly for each shot. One shot. Another. Each bullet hit dead center. It was as if he anticipated the target's moves before they happened, each shot almost impossibly precise. The aliens looked on, eyes widening, struggling to grasp the skill on display. They weren't just witnessing a demonstration, they were watching mastery unfold. It was something they hadn't prepared for, something that defied their expectations of a species they'd assumed inferior. There was no luck involved here, it was pure, practiced expertise. The marksman finished this sequence as calmly as he'd started, lowering his rifle as if what he'd done was nothing out of the ordinary. But now, the atmosphere among the aliens had shifted. Some soldiers exchanged glances, their previous mocking tones replaced by respect, even disbelief. They hadn't imagined a human would handle their elite training setups so effortlessly. The commander, though visibly disturbed by this, didn't relent. He wasn't ready to accept defeat. Next, he ordered a set of targets that moved at multiple elevations and speeds, each one timed to increase in velocity just as the previous one was taken down. The complexity was a deliberate attempt to shake the human's confidence, push him past his limits. The targets started to ascend, their trajectories crisscrossing the sky in intricate, high-speed patterns. For the aliens, this was one of their most rigorous training sequences, often challenging even for their own best soldiers. The marksman took a step back, adjusting his stance. He understood the strategy instantly. It was meant to overwhelm, to confuse and exhaust. But his focus remained. With each shot, he adapted, adjusting his timing, controlling his breathing. It wasn't just about speed, it was control. Each bullet found its target as if drawn to it, and once again, he cleared every moving object with accuracy that defied logic. It was beyond what the aliens considered possible, given the weapon in his hands. The crowd of soldiers couldn't mask their amazement anymore. They'd expected to see failure, perhaps a fluke or two, but nothing like this. The marksman was rewriting their perceptions, dismantling their assumptions with every shot. The commander clenched his fists, visibly uneasy now. He hadn't anticipated this kind of challenge from a species so far behind in technological advancement, and yet, here was one man proving their assumptions wrong with nothing more than skill. Seeing the growing respect among his troops, the commander grew desperate, his pride wounded. He motioned for another test, signaling to his officers. They quickly programmed a new set of drones, far smaller, nearly invisible to the naked eye, and equipped with advanced cloaking technology. These drones would flash in and out of visibility, mimicking the kind of stealth they assumed no human could track. Surely, this time, they would push the marksman past his limits. But the marksman did not hesitate. He was accustomed to reading even the subtlest of patterns, trained to predict and anticipate, to see beyond what was visible. As the drones flitted in and out, cloaking and uncloaking, he stayed motionless, his senses attuned to the slightest shifts in the air, the faint hums in the atmosphere. With each flash, he marked their locations, forming an invisible map in his mind. And with calculated precision, he fired, taking each drone down one by one, seamlessly adapting to their cloak and reveal tactics. The final drone hit the ground, and with it, the last shred of the alien's disbelief. The soldiers fell into a stunned silence, eyes fixed on the human marksman, their previous assumptions now lying in pieces. The commander's face twisted in frustration, the confidence he'd started with now turned to reluctant awe. He couldn't ignore the undeniable truth: this human, with nothing but a rifle and pure skill, had overcome every test they'd put before him. Their own technology, their advanced methods, had failed to outmatch raw human precision and adaptability. For the first time, the commander took a step back, no longer seeing the marksman as a mere subject of ridicule. Instead, he found himself looking at an equal, maybe even a superior in a skill that required more than technology. It required instinct, intuition, and resilience, the very qualities he'd long dismissed as irrelevant in the face of superior firepower. The marksman lowered his rifle, his expression unreadable, as if none of this had been for show. And indeed for him it hadn't. His task was complete, and there was no need for further demonstration. But as he turned to leave, the silence from the alien troops told him that the impact of his skill would last long beyond this demonstration. The aliens, for all their advancements, had seen something that day that couldn't be manufactured in a lab or replicated by technology. They'd seen the depth of human skill, the kind of focus and precision that went beyond mere machinery. The alien soldiers parted to let him pass, some of them nodding in silent respect. They'd come to mock Earth's weapons, its primitive projectiles and outdated mechanics. Yet here they stood, awed by a display of mastery that no technology could replicate. It was a lesson they would carry back to their own worlds, a quiet reminder that power lay not just in advancement but in the hands that wielded it. The alien commander, visibly rattled, wasn't willing to concede just yet. Determined to see the human falter, he ordered his top engineers to prepare the most challenging scenario yet: targets with complex AI routines, capable of random evasive maneuvers, programmed to predict and dodge any known aiming trajectory. These targets, they believed, would be the ultimate test, and surely no human could outsmart artificial intelligence designed to preemptively dodge every move. As the engineers scrambled to configure the targets, the alien soldiers watched the marksman closely, their initial derision replaced by a wary respect. They'd seen him dismantle their earlier challenges effortlessly, each shot landing with mechanical precision. Yet, despite the intensity of the previous rounds, he showed no signs of exhaustion, no change in his calm demeanor. There was a quiet confidence about him, a focus they were beginning to recognize as more than just talent. It was the mark of dedication, something they hadn't accounted for. The targets were ready, their AI routines tuned to operate on a different frequency than previous models. The movements were erratic, unpredictable even to the engineers who'd programmed them. For a moment, the commander felt a flicker of satisfaction, convinced that this time, the human would finally meet his match. These targets were faster, smaller, and smarter, constantly shifting directions in ways impossible to anticipate. The marksman's reaction was telling. He remained still, his gaze narrowing slightly as he analyzed the targets, absorbing every movement pattern, every subtle shift in speed and direction. His rifle remained steady, almost an extension of himself, as he tracked the erratic paths of the targets, calculating in his mind. To the untrained eye, it might have seemed that he was taking too long, hesitating, but the alien soldiers had learned to wait. They sensed that this man, despite the supposed limitations of his weapon, was about to surprise them yet again. Then, without warning, he moved, his finger pulling the trigger in quick, controlled bursts. Each shot was faster than the last, and with every discharge, a target dropped. Even as the AI attempted to dodge, recalculating trajectories, the marksman's accuracy was relentless. Each bullet seemed to know exactly where to be, bypassing the AI's evasive maneuvers as though the marksman anticipated each shift before it happened. He wasn't just reacting to the targets, he was predicting them, adapting to their every move. The soldiers, now fully invested, couldn't contain their amazement. This wasn't just shooting. This was something they couldn't explain, a skill they'd never seen, not even among their own elite. The AI had been programmed to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast anything in its path, yet here it was, systematically dismantled by a single human. It became increasingly clear to them that this wasn't about the weapon or the targets. It was about the man wielding them, his focus, his intuition, the way he seemed to read each situation with the instinct of a predator. The commander's frustration grew palpable as he watched his ultimate challenge disintegrate under the marksman's calm assault. He had banked everything on technology, on the superiority of his AI systems, and yet he couldn't shake the unsettling realization that skill was trumping technology in a way he hadn't considered possible. He'd long believed that a species as primitive as humanity was inconsequential, that their reliance on crude weapons and instinct made them easy to defeat. But now, facing the results, he was forced to reconsider. With a barely concealed look of desperation, the commander called for a last-ditch measure, an active combat simulation, where the targets would not only evade but fire back. These combat drones were programmed to replicate the responses of their most advanced fighters, adapting to the marksman's every move, adjusting for each shot, with the goal of rendering his attacks ineffective. For the first time, the commander issued this order with a hint of unease. He was no longer certain of the outcome but needed to prove, if only to himself, that his technology was still superior. As the simulation began, the drones unleashed a barrage of energy pulses aimed directly at the marksman. Yet, with every pulse, he moved with almost inhuman precision, dodging, shifting, and evading with a smoothness that seemed effortless. The soldiers watched in stunned silence as he continued to dismantle each target, never once breaking his rhythm. The drones responded, recalculating, adapting, but the marksman remained faster, his actions always one step ahead, as though he anticipated their every move. His rifle never wavered, each shot finding its target with unwavering precision, bypassing every defensive measure the drones deployed. The simulation, meant to overwhelm, only seemed to fuel his focus. The alien troops could no longer deny the truth unfolding before them. This human was more than a mere soldier, he was a master of his craft, someone who had honed his abilities to such a degree that even their finest technology could not match him. The final drone collapsed, its energy reserves depleted, its once proud frame reduced to a heap of metal. Silence fell over the training grounds as the aliens took in the full impact of what they had witnessed. For all their advancements, for all their sophisticated weaponry, they had been bested by the very skill they had mocked. Their commander, normally so self-assured, seemed at a loss, grappling with the reality that his most advanced simulations had failed to stop a single human with a rifle. As the marksman lowered his weapon, his expression remained as calm and composed as ever. He'd completed his task, proving nothing more than his own discipline and precision. But to the aliens, it was much more than that. They had seen a glimpse of what humanity could do, even without the technological crutches they relied upon. This man had turned their most complex simulations into a display of his superiority, a feat none of them would forget. Without a word, the marksman turned and walked away, leaving the aliens to process the lesson they'd just learned. They hadn't just been shown the strength of a skilled marksman, they'd been confronted with the power of human adaptability, the ability to face any obstacle with a calm, calculated resilience. For a species that prided itself on advancements and superiority, the experience was humbling. In that moment, as he disappeared from their view, the alien troops understood that Earth's strength lay not in its weapons or its technology, but in its people. The air around the training ground was thick with tension. The alien commander, visibly humbled, still held a glimmer of doubt. He called for one final test, a head-to-head challenge. For this, he summoned the most skilled alien marksman in their ranks, a soldier whose abilities were renowned, even legendary. If anyone could match the human, it would be this marksman, trained from a young age in the nuances of their advanced weaponry, honed to perfection by a lifetime of combat and skilled drills. The human marksman's expression remained steady. He showed neither excitement nor intimidation, only an acceptance of the task before him. The alien crowd waited, their gazes shifting between the human and their champion, tension rippling through them. In their minds, this was not merely a test of skill, but a symbolic confrontation, a final answer to the question of which force was stronger, raw, human precision or the trained, technologically enhanced alien expertise they believed to be unbeatable. As the challenge commenced, the alien marksman took his position, weapon poised and eyes scanning for his target. His movements were flawless, calculated with the discipline drilled into him over years of training. He represented everything they believed to be superior: speed, precision, and an unbreakable connection to his weaponry. The alien soldiers watched with hope, expecting him to set a standard that even the human couldn't meet. The human marksman moved with the same calm focus he'd shown all along. His approach was different, not mechanical, but intuitive. While the alien moved like a machine, the human operated with a quiet fluidity, each movement efficient, each decision precise. His grip on the rifle was natural, as though it was part of him, and he worked with a level of concentration that rendered every external noise, every distraction, irrelevant. They faced off, each trying to outmaneuver the other in a series of swift, but precise movements. The alien, relying on a weapon equipped with predictive technology, calibrated each shot, expecting the human to react predictably. But the human's responses were anything but predictable. His experience, his instinct, went beyond the calculations of the alien's targeting systems. Where the alien soldier expected routine patterns, the human responded with subtle shifts, precise movements that kept him just outside the line of fire. The alien soldiers watched in disbelief as their champion began to falter, his shots growing more frantic as he tried to track the human's constantly shifting position. The human marksman, meanwhile, remained in control, methodically adjusting his stance, his breathing, his aim. Each moment felt intentional, each second a calculated step toward the inevitable. With a final, perfectly timed shot, he hit his mark, neutralizing his opponent with a precision that left no room for doubt. Silence blanketed the area as the alien champion staggered, acknowledging his defeat with a look of respect rather than resentment. The alien troops, stunned, began to understand what had transpired. They had just witnessed something profound, something that went beyond their comprehension of skill and technology. For all their advancements, for all their reliance on predictive algorithms and precision equipment, they had overlooked a critical factor: the adaptability and intuition of the human mind. In the moments that followed, a shift occurred among the alien ranks. No longer did they view the human marksman with condescension or doubt. Instead, they looked at him with a deep-seated respect, even a touch of reverence. They'd come to mock Earth's crude weaponry, convinced that their advanced arsenal was unassailable. But now, faced with the undeniable reality, they understood that technology alone was not the answer. Skill, adaptability, and resilience were qualities that no machine could replicate. The alien commander, who had started the day with an unwavering belief in the superiority of his forces, found himself rethinking everything he had assumed about Earth and its inhabitants. He approached the human marksman, no longer with scorn, but with the humility of someone who had been taught a valuable lesson. There were no words, only a silent acknowledgement of respect, an unspoken understanding that transcended species and backgrounds. The human, in his calm and controlled manner, nodded back, recognizing the significance of that gesture. For the alien troops, the encounter was unforgettable. They would return to their worlds with a new story, one that would spread quickly, a tale of a human who had proven, beyond a doubt, that true strength was not measured in the sophistication of weapons but in the mastery of one's skill. They had encountered a power they hadn't anticipated, a resilience that defied every technological advantage they had. Earth was no longer a world they could dismiss as primitive or inferior. It was a place that had produced warriors capable of greatness, capable of feats that transcended technology. As the human marksman walked away, rifle lowered, the aliens could only watch, each one filled with a newfound respect. They understood now that while they might have technology, humans had something they could not manufacture, something that could not be programmed or predicted. It was a lesson that would echo through their ranks, a reminder of humility and respect for the capabilities of an unexpected opponent. In their minds, Earth's rifles were no longer laughable. They were symbols of something far more powerful, a testament to the strength and precision that lay within humanity. They had learned that day that strength didn't come solely from technology, but from the mastery of one's craft, from dedication, and from the relentless pursuit of excellence. And as they turned to leave, each one knew they would remember this lesson for a very long time.